Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so I'd like to begin because there's a lot that I would like to go over tonight. Um, some people have been having difficulties with the style of writing, of literary analysis, and I'd like to go over some of the basics so that it will help people understand what it is that is required for this course. Um, on your screen, you should have an example of how to begin with pre-writing your literary analysis. So I'm going to go over the pre-writing functions that will help you write a successful paper. Let's say that you have decided for your theme that you are going to talk about the river imagery in literature of the modern period. And you want to take an archetypal view. That would be your stance. So within your theme, you have your stance, which will be the archetypal view, and you have river imagery, which would be your image or your what kind of theme you want to tie into certain pieces of literature, and then talking about the modern time period. So here is the overall theme listed. Okay. We have people coming in. So the next thing that you should do is once you have decided upon your theme and your stance, then you need to start collecting quotes. And that's really going to help if you collect quotes that will support any of these ideas.
Yeah. Bye. I'll see you later. It was good to talk to you. Yeah. Have fun on your trip.
Hey, we're hearing somebody's background.
Okay. Bye.
All right. So let's say you want to collect some quotes on modernism because this is the time period where your pieces are coming from. And I've shown you a couple quotes here from Lauder. By trusting the power of art to save us from deadening features of everyday life, especially the desensitizing elements in urban industrial society, the artist both challenges tradition and reinvigorates.
Thank you.
And,
Later.
okay, we're hearing somebody in the background. Okay, thank you. And so when this quote is being cited, you'll notice it says in parentheses Lauder et al. Because there are more than one author. So you have that comma, the year of that the work was published, and then the page number from which this quote came. Now this is from the old Lauder book, but it doesn't matter for an example. Here is another quote coming from Lauder about modernism and its alienation, and it talks about it. But again, you write down the citation there because you're going to use all this later. And then here's a third quote talking about the work of the modern period and how it doesn't set into a historical framework. And it just these are all definitions of the modern period that you can use later in your paper. The next set of quotes, and it's really best get your B&H over with at the beginning of the paper. You know that you are required to use Barton and Hudson within your paper. So a really good way to use it is to use it as how you define your stance. So as you can see remember up above, your stance was the archetypal view. So here are some quotes from Barton and Hudson. The work often used to refer to characters, plots, themes, and images that recur throughout the history of literature, both oral and written. And then notice that it is cited, Barton and Hudson, and the year and the page number Archetypal critics have sought to catalog some of the more common archetypes, natural elements. Other specific examples of archetypes include water, which, of course, since remember you're going to be talking about river imagery, so of course the water reference is going to be significant here. And again, this would be able to be used later in the paper. You need to decide what works you're going to use for your discussion. Now, planning on this particular paper, the works would be The Negro Speaks of Rivers, The River, Wasteland, and Sweat. And again, these are from the old Lauder, but this is just for example. Anyway, but you can see, well, if you're going to have a paper about the imagery of river imagery, then of course any poems or works that talk about rivers, of course, is going to work out here. So here are some quotes. Then you start to gather quotes from the works themselves that will support your theme and thesis. So here's a quote that shows river as death, okay? And this is from Sweat. While she knew the cold river was creeping up and up to extinguish that eye, which she must know now that she knew. Okay, but again, river as kind of the image of death overcoming a character. But also the river as source of life. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. Okay, and so a poem from Langston Hughes. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. Again, Langston Hughes. I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sun. Okay, Stephen Crane. The river spreading flows and spends your dream. Okay, and again from Crane. The river lifts itself from its long bed, poised wholly in its dream, a mustard glow, tortured with history, its one will flow. Okay, so you have all these quotes that you can incorporate into your discussion to support your theme of the river imagery. Okay, and a river as an image. And these are different kinds of images that you will show within your paper. And you will only discuss, if you were doing this paper, you would only discuss any references to rivers. That's it. Nothing else. You may know other things about the paper and other things may occur to you, but the only thing that counts is what is your theme, your thesis, and that's the only thing you're going to support. So you go through it and you look for quotes that will support your discussion of this only. Okay, river as a living entity. And notice when you use more than one line from a poem, you use the forward slashes to indicate that it is going to a next line. Your last paper was part of the assignment was to include one poet. So this is how you show several lines. And this is from T.S. Eliot. The river sweats. Oil and tar, the barges drift, with the turning tide, red sails wide to leeward swing onto the savvy spar. Okay, so again, showing the river with the personification that's in here. And you don't even have to say that it's personification. I mean, you can if you like, but river as a living entity, again, staying with the idea of the river. And you take all this information, and then your thesis paragraph would have an introduction in it, but it also may incorporate these quotes. And look at how these quotes are not just thrown in, and it's like, here's a quote. This quote means. It's not like that. You incorporate it into your discussion. The modern period includes literature written between 1910 and 1945 by several subgroups of writers with naturalist, regionalist images, and those from the Harlem Renaissance among them. Writers generally were reacting against previous romantic styles and themes, and notice how the quote is incorporated in the discussion, and by trusting in the power of art to save society from the deadening features of everyday life, especially the desensitizing elements in urban industrial society, the artist both challenges tradition and invigorates it. So again, you don't just throw it out there. It has to mean something within your discussion. Many writers were also expressing feelings of alienation within their society, viewing it as, and here's a quote, but it's incorporated, as a condition of permanent marginality. Alienation can take on very different meanings and tonalities depending on a person's immediate circumstances. Okay, and again, from Lauder. As a result, many writers adopted a modern tone in their views and stylistic presentations in their work, but still look back to, and here comes the theme, to archetypal themes as thread to their personal and literary past. This produced a body of work that is varied and, again, incorporating the quote, doesn't fit comfortably into a set of historical framework because of its elements are forward-looking and some are not. Okay, and still, archetypal themes by definition. Here's a great time, because you're going to use that as the stance, throwing in Barton and Hudson. This is the time to do it. By definition, refer to characters, plots, and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So the quotes, it just is part of the discussion. And it's the way to get Barton and Hudson in there. Okay? Setting archetypal themes within the framework of modernism allows the writer to, and again, utilize examples of archetypes, including water. Okay? Because that's going to be what the discussion is. So we know that we're going to have this idea coming through. And then I know from this next section what works are going to be discussed, or at least which authors. The works of Langston Hughes, T.S. Eliot, Stephen Crane, and Zora Neale Hurston reflect the varied styles of the modernist period, sharing the natural view of a river and all the related archetypal themes of its water image as life giver, life taker, and the conscious mind. So I know from this very last paragraph, I know whose works are going to be studied. I know what time period these works come from. I know it's going to talk about the theme's going to be the river, and I know that the stance is going to be archetypal themes. So everything is there at the beginning. It doesn't do any good for the reader to have you put your stance or your theme at the end of your paper. Then, and me as the reader, how do I know what you are discussing? How do I know that you are keeping track? You can't just write on anything that comes to your mind. And I know in the past, in the way some courses are set up, when they say reader response to an article, it just means you can say whatever comes to your mind about the article. But that's a reading response, not reader response. Reader response is a completely different kind of analysis. And although it does have a lot to do with you and your response to something, it requires you to identify yourself as a filter and how your reading influences the work. It's really a complicated view, and I would tell you to get it right, you really need the article that I included by Stanley Fish, because it explains all of this, and it's a more difficult stance to take. I mean, I'm not saying don't take a reader response, but it is going to be more difficult, and at this point, you don't want to make it more difficult for yourself. So if this is your pre-write, now it's going to be so easy to write your paper, because you can just write around the quotes. One section of your paper can be about river as death. And within your discussion, if you were talking about sweat, you don't have to just talk about, okay, in sweat, Zora Neale Hurston. You can talk about your image, your theme, and then say how this theme of river as death is evident in Sweat by Nora Zeal Hurston, and you support your discussion with quotes. You're never going to get a grade that you like on your paper unless you support it with quotes from the work. It is in the it's in all of the directions. And when it says, and let me find instructions for you here. Okay. All right. In your instructions, back up generalizations by specific references to the literary text you are discussing. And a reference can't be just you telling about it. You could say anything. You could get it from anywhere. I mean, those of us in the classroom right now, you know that state assessments on writing are requiring our 9th and 10th graders to support everything that they write about with specific examples from the work, specific quotes. We're asking this of our 9th and 10th graders. I have to ask it of you. As a graduate student, you need to know how to write this kind of literary analysis. And it isn't an opinion from me. It is a fact, and you've already had this. Those of you who had ENG 645, some of you had Dr. Scheib, some of you had other instructors. They went over this, that you must support your discussion with quotes from the work, and they have to be done in an APA style. So you have to quote the writers in this particular style. All right. Again, back up generalizations. This is shown in all of your works. And all of them say refer to Barton and Hudson. And again, the best way to refer to Barton and Hudson is really when you talk about your actual stance, because Barton and Hudson has all the definitions of all the stances. But I've also given you definitions of the stances in your works. There are several ideas that I really want you to include in your papers. Okay? And let me, okay. Move this over here. Okay? You need to stay in present verb tense. The character avoids conflicts rather than the character avoided conflicts. There'll be a couple times if you are talking, let's say if you were talking about modernist writers, you know, there might be one or two times where you said, well, in the past they reacted to this, and there might be a couple past tense. But when you are talking about the works, it must be in present verb tense, as if it is unfolding as you are showing it to me. I need you to avoid run-ons, fragments, commas, places. This is just, you know, basic conventions. Plot summary. I've read the works. I know what they're all about. The plot is not significant to your discussion unless it specifically refers to your theme. So that's when I said you only talk about the river, if that is your theme, the imagery of the river, you know, and then image of a river as death, images of a river this, you know, whatever. That's all the discussion that I want. I want nothing else because it is not significant to this paper. It actually should make it easier to write the paper, but for some people it has made it more difficult because I know you want to show me that you understand um, all different elements of a short story or symbols or this and that. But unless your paper is on specific symbolism, I don't want to hear about anything else but what your paper is supposed to be on. So you need to be specific on that. Other discussions are not relevant. And you can't just say, oh, this is symbolism. That doesn't cut it. I need to know what kind of symbolism specifically. It'll make it easier for you to write and find your quotes and keep on track. So if you are doing nature, you need to do nature as symbolized, maybe through birds. Well, there was bird imagery, a lot of that, like in the first story in The Awakening. Okay, so if it's not just imagery, it'd be bird imagery. Or maybe, again, there's references to water, there's references to flight and flying, okay? And you have to pick one and stay on that specific one. So if you are saying, I'm taking a feminist approach, but the theme that I'm using as a woman characterized as a caged bird because of the confinements of her patriarchal society, then, and feminism talks about that. I mean, but you have to stay within that. If you want to talk about how the women treat the women, also, again, the roles, that would work. But if you want to talk about society in general, then you're taking a sociological approach, which is fine. But I need to know, what are you using to show that? Again, no extraneous or irrelevant information. I want nice transitions between paragraphs. For many of you, it's a transition from one work to the next. I don't want your paper to be a laundry list of quotes and ideas. Like I said, intertwine your quotes within the discussion. Never, never use second person you or first person I in a literary analysis. It is not a personal essay. It is not, I think this, because this whole paper is what you think. This is your analysis. Okay? Let me move on to the next command. All right. Use, like I said, B and H early in your theme. Be specific in the kinds of imagery. No one-word themes. You can't go love, motherhood, or birds. Your theme would be the effect of love on negative characters. Motherhood as a symbol of perceived positive female behavior. Bird imagery as a symbol of women's desire for freedom. Okay? Again, within your paper, you need a theme and a stance. I don't have any assignments in here where you use more than one theme or more than one stance. So when you are doing a series of works, you have to use one theme and one stance. And that has to carry through to every single work. So you have to find something that relates to all the works you have chosen. A one theme that relates to all the works, a one stance that relates to all the works. And this is something I have to make you understand. Authors do not apply stances. These women, although they did kind of sprout feminism later, they were not writing from a feministic stance. Feminism as a stance did not even exist when most of the writers in your book wrote. They didn't even know about that. They knew that, they didn't like the role of women in society, but the stances that you are applying come from you as the critic. You are giving yourself permission to take a sociological approach. You are giving yourself permission to take a feministic stance. The stance does not come from the writer. It comes from you. So do not state in your paper that the writer has taken a feministic stance or the writer has taken a psychological stand. No, you are assigning that. You need to show, don't tell. Don't say, this quote is an example of. Incorporate the quotes within your discussion. And your conclusion should not be a restatement of your thesis or a recap of your paper. Sometimes it's a really good place to put in what was the author's purpose or all of the author's purpose in writing these works. That might be a good thing to put in. Okay. This one's kind of big. I'm going to try a smaller one for you here. Okay. Now, I've given you this example before, but I'm giving it to you again. And you can see that I've even given you a fill-in-the-blank thesis statement. If you are having difficulty having a thesis statement at the beginning of your paper, then you can use this fill-in-the-blank one until you feel comfortable. So in name of the work, short story novels, or names of the, works of, name the people, name the author. So in this work, this author, illustrates, shows, whichever. What? A literary device, okay? Which would be your theme. It's how your theme is presented in these works. It might be nature imagery or whatever to show, and then you put your theme. Then you put the author's wish to and what the purpose is. Now this section here, the author's purpose, you might take that out there and later on use that as your conclusion. That would be really good. But then utilizing and name the lens allows the reader, what does it allow by utilizing this theme? What is it conveying to you? And here's an example. In Sonnet 18, William Shakespeare utilizes images of nature to illustrate how his lover excels in comparison. So the theme is his lover exceeds nature. However, Shakespeare also points out that while the speaker's lover is superior to elements of nature, it is the lasting effect of the poem itself that will serve as a testament of the speaker's enduring love. So all this yellow part, this has everything to do with the theme, okay? Now the green part is the reference to the lens. Utilizing a formalistic approach allows the reader to explore how Shakespeare constructs a work that contrasts symbolic imagery with direct address to convey both romantic and realistic image to his lover. So it's talking, formalistic is also new criticism. And when you're talking about a formalistic approach, you're talking about structure. So it's saying that Shakespeare has this really flowery, symbolic language, but he also has very direct address, and these two together give you a feeling, almost a conflicting feeling in the style, but it really conveys romantic and realistic ideas. All right, so I've given you this example before, but notice that references to the theme will be in yellow, references to the lens will be in green, and then examples with a supporting quote and an example of supporting discussion. So you can see how this is, okay, explores the issue of the oppression of women in her short story, The Awakening, and then a little support of this, maybe, that she was exploring oppression of women because she felt she was oppressed and she was a wife and mother and all that. And this supports, okay, this idea. This is supporting discussion. And then we get into the lens. Feminists critical approach, as well as extended metaphors. Extended metaphors is yellow because it's going to be the way that extended metaphors is what's going to show the oppression of women. And then back to the feminist approach. And then boom, in this kind of hot pink, here's a quote to support, okay, the stance. And it comes right from Barton and Hudson, and also from later from Chopin, okay? We have, again, as this is going on, the air of imprisonment, foreboding is felt from the beginning of the extended metaphor of different birds. And we know that this extended metaphor, it was up here, it was extended metaphors, it was up here in the thesis statement, okay, so it's part of the theme, okay, okay, and here's a support of it. The bird is used as first bird's a parrot, okay, again, metaphor of the bird, reference to the theme, support, cage bird, discussion, okay, and then we have in the green, treats his wife as property, okay. So again, this is color-coded, and it is in, I left an example of this. This color-coded example is in your course content. So you can look through it. I'm not going to read it to you. That'd be insulting. But anyway, you can see it is all color-coded to show you that every single paragraph refers back to the theme, back to the stance, uses a quote to support it, okay? And you have the quotes throughout, and they are cited properly using the APA format. All of your papers need to be in that kind of format. It really, really will help. Also, in your course content, okay, I've given you a literary analysis overview. Okay, this is what I just went over, a review of the APA style, how to do it for poetry, because citing poetry in APA style is kind of tough because APA was not designed for literature. Okay, but it shows you and shows you when you have a poem, you use the lines from the poem and you say the word lines 2 through 3. Okay, how you quote several lines from a poem. But look at this. In this slideshow that I've given you, I have told you all the approaches, and I've told you the pages from Barton and Hudson where you can find the actual definition, okay, of each literary stance. So you can use that at the beginning of your paper as part of your discussion, okay? But all the pages are there, so they're right there for you. Use this as a reference, okay? And read the Stanley Fish. All right. So, now is the time. I really, really, I'm hoping that if you have any questions, now is the time to ask them, because I didn't get a lot of questions the first chat because there was just so many things to go over with just the courses. But any question you ask, I'm sure everybody would ask too. So this is a really good time. What is it you need help in? And I'm also at this point, and I will be quiet then, because so many people have had problems understanding this, I am going to allow you to rewrite one assignment. And you can choose which one, but only one. You cannot rewrite all your assignments. But I've given you tons of feedback and notes. And if you apply them, then it will work. If you apply what I've gone over here, it will work. I will let you rewrite one assignment only. It won't be an average, it'll be a new grade. But it has to You really have to make significant changes that go along with the notes that I've given and with the ideas I've given here. So now I'm going to answer any questions. Okay, the rewrite due by, I will take the rewrite till the very end of the course. Because right now you're up to your eyeballs in assignments and writing. So you don't really have time for that, but at the end of the course you might have time. So I will take the rewrite up to the last day. Any other questions? I hear some mad typing, so I'll wait till I get the message. You don't have to be afraid to speak. I'm sure your question will be everybody else's question as well. Now, once we get, you're going to have this kind of writing for the next assignment and for your last assignment. The stance and a lens, yes. A stance and a lens is the same thing. A stance and a lens is the same thing. It's just another name for the same thing. And again, they're all listed there with definitions. And boy, put in that Barton and Hudson because it's in the rubric. So I have to mark you down if you don't have that. But I'm hoping this will help you. But really, I can't impress upon you enough. If you do this pre-write that I've shown you here, and again, the pre-write is in your course content. If you do that pre-write, then all you have to do is write around it to write the rest of your paper. You have everything that you need. Something else I want to show you too, while you're thinking of any other questions, is that some of you from the beginning of the course, okay, I'm in the course content here. Okay, if you look at the course content, I made you calendars. Okay, did you all download this? Don't use the syllabus. And I told you that because this is a summer course. And the syllabus is not right. That's why I have, the assignment dates and things changed because it just isn't right because we have to compress 8 weeks into 7, which is part of the reason for your stress. Okay. Now, let me answer this. The writers do revolve around similar stances and themes. And if you are, I don't care if you're repetitive. If it works, it works. It's a different work, so it's a different paper. Yeah, we have a load of feminist works that will work with a feminist stance. There's no question about it. I mean, you can alter a little bit and say it's sociological. But, I mean, the yellow wallpaper lady is crazy. So, if you want to take a psychological approach, you can talk about, that some of these men really, in trying to be kind, really killed the women, and some of the men, just in being lousy, killed the women too. So this psychological approach could be kind of interesting. You just have to decide whether you're going to use the Freudian approach or the Jungian approach, and both of those are in your Barton and Hudson. And so you have to pick that. But a psychological approach really could be very interesting too. But if you find, hey, I'm killing it with the feminists here, I don't care. If you write your paper well and you support it with that, it doesn't matter to me. A good paper is a good paper, well supported, using one stance, one theme. Hey, go for it. It's not going to hinder your grade. I'd rather have a good paper. So that's okay by me. But you can see with this calendar, everything's there. All of the readings, the discussions, the assignments when they're due, everything is on the 2-page calendar. Put it on your refrigerator where everything exists. Okay, now, 2 stances merge like naturalism with feminism. I'm so glad you brought this up because this happens so often. Naturalism is not a stance, it's a literary movement, just like the modern approach that I mentioned before. It's a literary movement, but it does tie with feminism, but it's a movement, and there's a difference between a literary movement and a literary stance. Okay, so be careful. I have something here. Okay. Okay. Literary, I'm going to show you this. This is kind of, I can get this out of the way. These are American literary thought, and these are movements like Puritanism, Enlightenment, Unitarianism, Transcendentalism, pragmatism, naturalism. Even Freudianism was both a movement and a stance. And it's very frustrating because some of these are so close. Existentialism is not a stance, but it is a movement. While Marxism is a movement, but sociological approach with a focus on Marxism is a stance. So it gets kind of crazy here. So these are the literary movements, and I have them again, of course. You can find this in the course content. But Enlightenment, that's not a stance, it's a movement. Romanticism, Transcendentalism, Realism. Oh, okay, the Naturalism, I'll go back there. See, it's an outgrowth of realism, and they tend to view people as victims. Now, you can say, that this movement, just like I did on that pre-write where I was talking about the modern, the modern movement, but the stance was, in that particular one, an archetypal. So I've given you all the movements here, but I've also given you the stances. And you will see on the top, it's going to say whether it's a movement or a stance. So I have that American literary thought that's in there. So if you, and I'm going to show you again, all right, here's the example where the stance is archetypal. The movement, the era is the modern period. So if you are talking about naturalism, don't talk about it in terms of a stance. You can say that it was a movement that engendered a feministic approach, but really keep in mind naturalism started back in the 1860s, and they definitely did not have the feminist approach yet then. But we are very fortunate that we are able to cross the boundaries of time because we have given ourselves permission to use these stances. So pick a stance, but be careful that you don't confuse a movement for a stance. I would say use the stances that I've given you, and they're all in here. Let me move down here to see. Okay. But see this American literary thought? That'll show you the difference between the movements and the stances, and it's right in there. Again, if you want to tackle reader response, you must read this Stanley Fish article, which I'm sure you don't want any more reading, so you're probably not going to take that one. But here are the literary stanzas. Here's literary thought. You can look at the syllabus, but don't follow it because it doesn't work with the summer term. That's why I gave you also in the assignments, I gave you the assignments and the points breakdown because they're different. Oops. Wait a minute. I opened that wrong. Okay. Oops. Okay. Open. Yeah, it's just going to open it this way. It'll open right for you. But anyway, what I've done is it shows you what you're doing during what week. It's kind of like your calendar and what's due, but it shows you how many points each assignment is due and when it is. So it gives you the breakdown for the 7-week course. Okay. So yeah, look at that. All right. Do you have any other questions? I'm just that's okay. No, what I have given you, I've given you the breakdown for the 7-week course. The syllabus follows an 8-week course. And that's why it's confusing. That's why I gave you the separate breakdown in your course content so you know what is due when and why. Okay? So it's no final exam. That's, and I said that in the first session. Let me show you that again. Okay, because that's very exciting for everyone, I know. Let's go to, okay, here are your assignments, and you can see, actually, this used to be the final exam. This assignment 3.5 used to be the final exam, so people only had like 2 days to do it. But anyway, it's not the final exam anymore. Okay? You are going to have it as your regular assignment right there. Okay? And that you can apply that to either the Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven or Clifford Odets Waiting for Lefty. So it talks about postmodernism. But it used to be the final. It's not anymore. It's just a regular old assignment. Now, the only one that's going to be different from all of them, and I'm going to go over this in the last Collaborate. I'll go over this in detail. But again, it's the same thing except lucky you. Now you get to write in first person because this assignment is actually a reader response approach because you are the lens for this. Okay? So in this, you're going to cover 10 works, 7 authors, and 1 cultural perspective. You're going to pick one that is not yours, and you are going to discuss how these works represent a particular culture and how what you've learned from it, how it's different from your culture, and how you are going to apply that in the classroom in presenting this culture in your future work. Okay? Okay. Yeah, it says final exam in the grade book, but it's really 3.5, and I'll make sure that that's out of there so it'll be a clarification. Because you do not have a final. The final is 3.5. Okay? So yeah, I will double check in the assignments to make sure that you don't have like 8 extra points in there. Okay? All right. Now let me read this. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I don't want to do the math. I'm not interested in, okay, well, you were 1 day late, so I'm taking off 1 point. You've already seen what happens to you if your assignment is late. Okay? It's miserable. And to catch up is awful. I did not want you to do this to yourself. But sometimes life happens. I know it's the end of the school year. Don't I know it's the end of the school year? Remember, I'm also in the classroom too. I have a full schedule, just as many of you do, and I also was in charge of videotaping and making all the copies and mailing out all the copies of the graduation. So I get it. I know one of you said that you are a dance instructor and you had your recital. Well, I too am a stage manager for the Fort Lauderdale Children's Ballet Theater and Dance Dimensions, and spent my entire weekend at the theater, being the stage manager. So, that's why you got your papers a little later this week. You got them on Sunday morning. That won't happen this week. But it was, so yeah, real life happens. But if you get behind, it's going to be awful. And I'm just doing this for your own good. But I'm not going to sit there and take off 1 point here, 2 points there. If you let me know it's going to be late, you let me know, kind of, if you can, sort of why, and we'll work it out. A couple days is not going to kill me, or you, but you're not going to get it graded back as soon, maybe. Now it's the end of the year. I may, be better at that. But you'll never wait more than a week. But you need to give yourself a break and get these assignments in on time, or you're just going to, it'll be terrible. So, if things happen, fine. But get them in as soon as you can on time. I know real life happens, but I just can't keep, waiting weeks and weeks and weeks, because at the end, then, it's just a bad situation for you. And I can't give you, an incomplete unless you have 80% of your work in. You have to have 80%, and the grades have to be pretty good to get an incomplete in the class. So don't go there. Just get your work in. I know it's hard, and some of you are facing some real serious circumstances, and I will tell you I am too. But, me telling you that, do you want me to say, oh, well, this is happening, so I couldn't grade your papers? Yeah, right. Okay, so we just have to do what we have to do, and we have to, real life is tough, but just do the best you can. Please, if you want to send me your thesis during the week and say, hey, could you look at my thesis? Now, I'm not going to grade your whole paper and then send it back to you to turn in, but if you want to send me, what do you think about this paragraph to show discussion and support? Yes, send it to me. And then I'll get a good paper, and I'll be so happy, and so will you. Okay? Once you get this assignment right once, that's it. All of them, you'll get it, all of them right, and it's going to be so easy, and you're going to go, why did I make this so hard for myself? This isn't bad. I only have to write on one thing in one stance. Okay? So, give yourself a break. We can do this together. I mean, if you haven't done this kind of writing before, well, now's the time to learn it. So if you send me a thesis, or you send me a supporting paragraph, send it to me so I can say, yeah, okay, yes, or fix this or fix that. So you don't, mess up a whole paper. Okay, that's my job. But your job is to get that to me before it's due so I can help you out. Okay? Do you have any questions? Other questions? Yes, some good ones, because people are, like I said, your question will be other people's question. Don't be afraid to ask. What can I do to make this easier for you? Good. I want you to feel better. I want you to, I don't want you to feel bad. I'm a teacher too, it's just, I'm there with you. I have to tell you, I am there with you. I am in the trenches, and I understand your frustration, but You can get through this, and you can get through this well. And remember, you get to rewrite one paper. Okay, so now that you know what you're doing, but send me a paragraph, send me a thesis, let me look at it, so I can give you feedback now instead of, 2 weeks later. Okay, so anything else? Okay, so go out and write and support and use quotes and one stance and one theme, and we'll be so happy. Okay, all right. Have a great, for those of you who are in your last days, couple days, hope you get out alive. But hang in there. We'll get through this course, I promise you. And I told you from the beginning, now you believe me. This is probably one of the most difficult courses. But you get through this, and you know you've done something. You can be proud of yourself. So, and you will. So hang in there. Have a great week, and we will carry on. Yes, counting the days. All right. I'm going to then put this recording in again. It took so long last time, I just put it into a Dropbox. Maybe this time it will work, but if not, I will put it in a Dropbox so that you can refer to this if you need to. But everything is in the course content. Look at the course content. Take it easy. Have a good evening.